All right, welcome to episode 37 of Life is Horror, the anthology episode. I'm going to reveal my top 10 horror anthologies, top 10 favorite horror anthologies. And look at my background, creep show. Maybe spoiling something later. Is that going to be my number one? Stay tuned. And also review 5 movies from 2023 like Creepypasta and also Satanic Hispanics, Jethica, Till Death, and Suitable Flesh. So there you go. And also at the end, I will quiz you guys on the horror anthology, subgenre, whatever. So yeah, anthology quiz at the end. Stay tuned. But first, I guess let's jump into the ranking. Actually, let's just get to the interesting part. Let's talk about these movies. Let's get into the ranking, starting, I guess, at number 10. Now, I've seen, according to my list here, from what I can remember, I've seen about 60 horror anthologies, and this will be my top 10, and I'll shout out some honorable mentions later. Now, my number 10 spot could be one of a few different movies, but I just ultimately decided on this one, and that is the Mortuary Collection. I'm not going to talk about these movies in depth because honestly, I don't remember them that well. This is one I've only seen once, and it's got Clancy Brown, who I love from everything he's done, really. Pet Sematary 2, and of course, he's Dr. Cortex in Crash Bandicoot. That's who he'll always be to me. And this one came out a few years ago, 2019, but I think it got a wide release in 2020. And it's kind of similar, the wraparound, very similar to a lot of anthologies, like Tales from the Hood, dealing with a mortician, and they'll even like body bags, in a way, like you're just at a morgue and they pull the sheet, reveal a body, and then we cut to that person's story to find out how they died. So, but yeah, it's like that. It's got, I think, 5 stories. And who directed these? Anyone that we know? No, this is one director. This is a one director anthology. Usually there's multiple directors with a lot of, modern day anthologies. I like to hire a bunch of people, but this is one. Ryan Spindle. Anyone in this that I would know besides Clancy Brown? No? All right. Well, so yeah, that's my number 10, The Mortuary Collection. I believe it's on Shudder, so check that out. And let's get to my number 9, which is Tales from the Crypt. This is probably the oldest anthology that will be on this list. So, yeah, Tales from the Crypt from 1972. This is like one of the Amicus. This is my favorite Amicus anthology. It's 5 stories, I believe, where these 5 people find themselves in a tomb. The Crypt Keeper explains why they are there through a series of frightening stories based on the classic comic book, which I've never read. Now, who directed this one? Freddie Francis. And so this is another one director anthology, and I believe Peter Cushing's in this one. He's in a lot of these Amicus movies, and yeah, I've seen this one a couple of times. Don't remember all that well. I'm sorry I didn't write any notes for this, but who cares? Just trust me when I say it's my number 9 and that you should see them. You should see all the movies on this list. I recommend all of them. This is a solid 70s anthology, one of the best from the 70s. Yeah, actually, it is the best from the 70s. Spoiler, there will be no more older anthologies. A lot of these will be 80s on up from here on out. So, number 8 is Southbound. This is one that I didn't really like all that much on first watch. I didn't dislike it or anything. I was just kind of like whatever about it. But then I just heard people like praise it so much, certain podcasters. I was like, did I miss something? So I went back, watched it again, and I enjoyed it much more on rewatch. This one is, I believe, multiple directors this time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the guys who did the recent crappy Scream movies, Scream 5 and 6, those 2 guys, they did this one. And David Bruckner and Justin Martinez, Chad Favela, Roxanne Benjamin. So yeah, we got like 4, 5, 6, a bunch of directors on this, and like multiple stories, kind of all set in the same city, like kind of like Trick or Treat. They're kind of like they intertwine, and so that's one of the most interesting aspects of it. I liked how they kind of connected all the stories together, and it's like they're all in hell. It's like a big old, purgatory scenario where it's just kind of like a loop at the end. That's what you find out. It's just like, spoiler, it's hell. And the poster kind of shows that, you know, it's satanic, they're in hell, and it's just repetition. No matter where they go, they just end up back where they started. Look at the poster, pretty cool poster. So yeah, 5 stories, and you got Larry Fessenden as like the narrator. I like him; he's pretty good, and a lot of fun, a lot of gore. There's a pretty gory. I remember the middle story has like this, like autopsy or something, or it's actually like an autopsy on a living person, and the gore there was pretty fantastic. So Southbound's a lot of fun. That's my number 8. Number 7, Cat's Eye from 1984. This is the Stephen King anthology. 3 stories from Stephen King. James Wood, or Woods. I can never remember if his last name is Wood or Woods. I think it's Woods. James Woods. I gotta think of that Family Guy song to remember. Pretty sure it's Woods. All right, so yeah, I reviewed this one. So if you want to hear my thoughts, you can watch that video, and I'll talk about it there. All right, so let's just jump into my number 6, Nightmare Cinema. I've only seen this one once, but I really enjoyed it. It had to make the list. Pretty gory and interesting stories. Forget how many, and I think there's like 4 or 5 of them, and a lot of different directors on this one. Joe Dante, a lot of classic directors, like you got Mick Garris and Joe Dante, and then you got a couple of newer ones. David Slade, I think he did 30 Days a Night, and a person whose name, like 2 people whose names who I can't pronounce. I think he's the guy who did Downrange. This guy, I can't even venture a guess, but their stories are pretty awesome in this, and it's one. This one's just got this is for gorehounds, and there's like a black and white segment that was visually interesting. And let's see what it says. A series of down on their luck individuals enter the decrepit and spine-chilling Rialto Theater, only to have their deepest and darkest fears brought to life on the silver screen by the projectionist, a mysteriously ghostly figure who holds the nightmarish futures of all who attend his screenings. And who does this? This has Mickey Rourke in it. It's the biggest name I see here. Outside of that, no one else. Patrick Wilson. And yeah, so check this one out, definitely. I think this one's on Tubi the last I checked, so check it out on Tubi for free. From 2019. And number 5, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, based on the TV show. I've never seen it, but I've only seen this movie, I believe, once. I saw part of it on TV a long time ago, and I completely forgot about this movie until I rewatched it like a year or 2 ago, and then I got to like the third segment. I was like, wait, I've seen this before. But I think only that part, and it was the gargoyle segment. And this one is, let me click on it. John Harrison directed this one. Is that the guy who did the music for Creepshow and Creepshow 2? This has Debbie Harry and Matthew Lawrence, David Forrester, Christian Slater, Julianne Moore, Steve Buscemi, a lot of people here. And one of the segments in this is from Stephen King. Some people consider this the official Creepshow 3. I think Tom Savini did some of the effects in this, and this has a lot of great effects work in it. And I like all the segments in this, and the wraparound is funny. It's this little boy captured by like this witch who's about to like cook him, but he's like distracting the witch by telling these stories, buying himself more time. So I like that. Not a lot of anthologies have really interesting or creative, cool wraparounds, but this one has a pretty good one. So Tales from the Dark Side from 1990, one of my favorite movies from 1990. Check that one out on Tubi also, I think. Or I think this one's on Prime, but Shout Factory has a Blu-ray of it, so pick that up. It's got a lot of cool special features on it. Number 4 is Scare Package from 2020, I want to say. And this one has another great wraparound. It's set at like it's at a dying video rental place. They have like only like VHSs there or something. I don't remember if this is a period piece. I think it's modern day, but it's like a dying rental store. And it's got 7 directors and 7 different stories. 0 working cell phones is the tagline. And they did a sequel last year or the year before and was not as good. This one's kind of like Scream in a way. It's very like self-aware. There's a lot of like horror references and like stuff for horror fans to enjoy. A lot of Easter eggs and stuff. Noah Sagan is one of the directors. I know him from like Cabin Fever 2. He's acted in a lot of stuff. That great movie from 2014, Starry Eyes, he was in that. I don't recognize any of these other directors, but yeah, it's very awesome, cool wraparound. And then the wraparound is like a segment itself at the end. It kind of goes on for a while. And this one's just a lot of fun. Over the top, gore. Like there's one sequence where I remember like a little tiny rock being thrown at someone's head, and then their head just explodes. And it's graphic, on screen, practical effects. It looked awesome. I laughed my ass off. Had to like rewind it, watch it again. I couldn't believe what I saw. It was awesome. So that's my number 4, right? Yeah, number 4, Scare Package. Much better than Scare Package 2, but 2 still watchable, but just the jokes didn't land like in part 1. Part 1's the better movie in my opinion. Number 3, the best of the VHS anthology series. Still going on. There's 6 of them now, right? And the 7th one coming this year. VHS 2 is easily the best because it has the best segments and it has the best wraparound. The series not known for having great wraparounds, but this one's the freakiest to me. The guy like blowing his own face off and his jaw's all mangled. It's like a failed suicide attempt. That was pretty creepy looking, and a lot of great effects in this. Great directors attached to this one. I think some of the best directors are attached to this one. You got the guy who did like the Raiden movies. What was his name? Gareth Evans and Timo Tijanto. I'm not sure how to say his name. Jason Eisner, Hobo with a Shotgun, and Treevenge. He directed the Slumber Party Alien Invasion one. You got Simon Barrett and Eduardo Sanchez from the Blair Witch Project. He does the zombie POV one in this, which I like that one. Yeah, a lot of great segments in this. I reviewed it. Check out that review to hear all my in-depth thoughts on this one. Easily the best of the series. Number 2, Trick or Treat from 2000, officially 2009. Got its festival premiere in 2007. But yeah, 2009's Trick or Treat, one of the best. Visually gorgeous film. Again, I reviewed this one and pretty much blew it in that whole review. Just praised it. Not many things wrong about this one. I love how these stories are all set in the same city. And I even actually recently visited the street that they shot this movie on. A lot of those locations, all those houses that the characters live at, they were actually shot on the same street. And the scene with the bus driving down, they have like that orange filter, looks very autumny, and like I was on that street. It was pretty cool to be there. And so that's all I'll say about this one. Moving on. Number 1, you know it, Creepshow, the best anthology. One of the first ones, if not the first anthology I ever saw, so there's a little bit of nostalgia here. But, I think I saw Creepshow 2 more as a kid, and I liked part 2 more as a kid. Like the Wooden Indian segment was one of my favorites, but, as I got older, I grew more attached to part 1. I think part 1's the better movie, just visually, stylish. It's very stylized. Part 2 just, I don't know, you can just tell there was half the budget in that movie. It doesn't have the style that part 1 has. The score in this one's amazing. The skeleton at the beginning, I remember that creeped me out as a kid. The segments are all amazing. The cast, this one's just stacked. And again, I reviewed this one too. This is George Romero and Stephen King. All stories written by Stephen King. And yeah, this is my favorite. I think I've said it before on this channel. I did a top 10 of 1982 also. This was my favorite of 1982. This is my favorite Romero film. This is my favorite King film. This is my favorite anthology film. So this is 4. This is my favorite of 4 different things here. So yeah, this is a heavy hitter film. This is like top 10. Like if I did like a top 10, top 25 horror movies of all time, this would be up there for me. It's a 10 out of 10. And also Trick or Treat's a 10 out of 10 for me. These are the only 2 10 out of 10s for me. Trick or Treat, Creepshow. The other ones are like 8s and 9s. And the first couple I talked about were like 7s. Yeah, this 10 out of 10. Amazing movie. And so that's my list. I guess I could shout out a couple of honorable mentions. Like what just missed the list, in case you're wondering. Trilogy of Terror. I liked that one on first watch when I did my 1975 ranking. And I think I saw part 2 first as a kid, and the whole Zuni fetish doll was always creepy to me. Just anything that shouldn't be alive and moving always creeped me out, because, Chucky is the franchise that got me into horror. Chucky is the one that gave me nightmares growing up. So anything that was like closely related to like the killer doll stuff gave me the creeps. You know, the wooden Indian in Creepshow 2. That's why I guess that one was my favorite, because it's like this thing shouldn't be alive and moving, but it is, so it's creepy. And you know, the Sunni fetish doll, that was terrifying. Vault of Horror, that's the other one from Amicus. That's like on the same Blu-ray as Tales from the Crypt. I like it almost just as much as Tales from the Crypt. So that one just missed the list. Tales from the Hood, I've only seen it once. That's one that a lot of people love. Yeah, it's got 2 sequels. I've only seen part 2 or 3. I think I saw 2. Hated it. Fucking hated that one. But Tales from the Hood, I liked it. Kind of some things about it age it. And it's got the same type of wraparound where, you know, they're at the morgue and they're revealing bodies and jumping into stories. It's kind of a cliche wraparound, but the stories were all right. And this one also has killer like puppets, little dolls that come to life. VHS 99, my second favorite VHS in that series. I think I talked about that on this channel already, reviewed it. After Midnight from 1989. I think I briefly discussed that in my 1989 ranking. It wasn't in my top 10, but Creepshow 2, I enjoy that one. I've already said my piece on that. The Twilight Zone movie, I reviewed that movie, and I think I rewatched it since that review, and I liked it a little bit more, but I still don't love it. Christmas Horror Story, I've seen this a couple times now, and it tries to be Trick or Treat, but it's just nowhere near as good. I just remember the one twist in the Santa segment that like blew me away the first time. I loved that part of the movie. And then VHS 85 and 94, those are all right. Scare Package 2, Chillerama has some hits in it, but too many misses in it. Some very cringy, like over the top comedy that just didn't land for me. You got like a Jewish Frankenstein monster in it, like Diary of Anne Frankenstein or something. Like it's pretty comical, a little too much for my liking. ABCs of Death 2. I prefer that one over ABCs of Death 1. Body Bags, John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper, or is it Tobe Hooper? I've heard some people say Tobe. All Hallows Eve, Art the Clown. This is the beginning of Art the Clown before, you know, Terrifier 1 and 2. And he's the best part of this movie. Like, he's the reason why I watched All Hallows Eve. It's like fast forward to his parts because the whole alien segment I don't like. And the first segment, I just like the Art the Clown half of that segment. And then when it turns into whatever, I'm just like, I'm not into this. The House That Dripped Blood. I don't remember much about that one. I think it has Peter Cushing in it. That's from the 70s. Two Evil Eyes from 1990. George Romero, Dario Argento team up for that one. It's basically like just 2 movies. So yeah, that's only 2 segments. And Tales of Halloween, that's like a dozen short stories together. That one's all right. I prefer All Hallows Eve over that one. From a Whisper to a Scream, The Willies. These are all like 6 out of 10, like slightly above average. Like these are fine, worth maybe one watch. Just don't go in with high expectations or anything. Like Patient 7, that one's from like 7-8 years ago. House of the Dead, not what you're thinking. House of the Dead from the 70s, the anthology movie. It has multiple titles, but it says House of the Dead right here. It actually says The House of the Dead, so that's slightly different. The Uncanny. And Trilogy of Terror 2 and Black Sabbath. All right, that's the last one I'll shout out. Black Sabbath, Mario Bava. That one has a lot of fans, and I think those are just the people who love Mario Bava so much that they love Black Sabbath just because it's Bava. I'm not super high on Bava. I don't hate this movie. It's just fine. I think stylistically it's a good movie. Well shot, cinematography, but it's just I was not very invested, engaged in the stories within. I found myself pretty bored, so that's why it's so low on my list here. It's like a 5 out of 10 for me. It's just like, yeah, it's fine. I'll probably never watch it again. So that is my anthologies. Ranking and honorable mentions. I didn't go over dishonorable mentions, but this video is going to be long enough, so fuck it. Let's get into my reviews. All right. So let's jump into these reviews, but first I gotta open up this thing. All right, so what should be the first one I talk about here, real quick? I guess Satanic Hispanics. We'll just keep it with let's keep talking about anthologies while we're at it. All right, so I just gotta scroll through my list and find it. If you've seen this podcast, solo cast enough, you know the deal. I always gotta look for the freaking movie, and I always have a hard time finding them. So then I just have to keep talking until I find it. Jesus Christ. I see all these other movies I'm going to be talking about later, but I can't. There it is. All right. So this is Satanic Hispanics from last year. Although it had like a festival like premiere in 2022, got its wide release last year, like in November, I think. Hispanic themed anthology, and there's 5 segments here, and the only one I know of that's this is the only one that I know of that's got 5 segments, including the wraparound. Wait. I'm saying this is the only one that I know of that's Hispanic themed. Sorry. I do this too. I always fuck up reading my own notes. I don't know how to read my own notes. So, yeah, is this the only one that's Hispanic themed like this, where every story is like this? I don't know. Let me know. So, and there's only 1 segment in this movie that I liked. So, I was just not a fan of this movie. There's 5 segments and only one did I actually get some enjoyment out of. And I think it was like the second one. A lot of it I thought was just kind of confusing, boring. It's never scary, hardly ever tries to be. The tone's uneven. Like, these aren't like all 5 stories where it's like one type of tone throughout, where they're all funny or they're all scary. It's like back and forth. Like, this one's serious, this one's really stupid and over the top, and this one's kind of both. And like, it was just all over the place. Half the segments are serious, the other half silly. The vampire segment was the silly one that I liked because it at least made me laugh. The first one made little sense, and there's no threat, like there was no like antagonist or anything that was really going on. I don't know what the hell was happening in that segment. The third one with the witch again made little sense, but by that point I had a hard time paying attention, so maybe that's why I was confused. I was just kind of dozing off. Half of the movie is spoken in the foreign language. Makes sense. The fourth segment tried to be funny, but I wasn't laughing at all and was checked out by that point. I don't know what the hell was going on in the climax or the wraparound. Like, in the wraparound, like, what the hell was going on there at the police station? The makeup effects were good, but there's not a lot of like effects in the movie, like on screen, like violence, gore, stuff like that. There's not a lot of that to keep me engaged. The acting is not great, especially in the wraparound. I thought, it has the dude from the Napoleon Dynamite. And so, yeah, I just was not a fan of this one. I know I'm not the only one, but there's some people who are loving this. But sorry, just not for me. This is not a good anthology, in my opinion. And speaking of bad anthologies, let's talk about Creepypasta. This is. It's not just a story anymore. Screenbox exclusive. Okay, where is it? Here it is. So, an anthology with annoying, unnecessary narration from a child who delivers lines terribly and has a wraparound that seems to be plagiarizing VHS a bit. It makes no sense again, and each story makes the viewer more sick. Literally, me and the viewer in the movie watching these segments is getting more and more sick. Just like in VHS, like 1 and 2 or whatever, like the girl watching it, like after this first segment ends, her nose is bleeding. At the second one, her eyes are bleeding or whatever. Like, she passes out after the third one, she's dead. Like, same thing going on here. It has almost 10 segments, and I can't remember a single one. None are very good. Super forgetful, low budget, trash, absolute. I just do not get anyone who likes this. Like, how could you? Like, there's nothing. I can't remember a single thing. Like, I'm reading my notes and I'm like, that happened? Like, demons with red glowing eyes cliche? Like, okay. In more than one of the segments, you get demons with red eyes and CGI fire, CGI ghost faces. Not Scream, but you know what I mean, ghost faces. Monsters under the beds and in the closet tropes. So this movie's just playing on a lot of cliches. There's no gore, there's no nudity, there's nothing to keep me interested. There's 2 segments that were in Spanish. Every segment had a common theme of like supernatural spirits, demons, monsters attacking at night. Kind of boring for a short runtime. This is like less than 90 minutes. It's like 80 minutes or less. And it was pretty boring. So yeah, 10 segments, and I could not tell you right now off the top of my head a single one. There's a monster in the closet. That's a segment in this movie. So yeah. Woo! Not much to talk about there. Yeah, so two bad anthologies. I didn't see a single good anthology from 2023. And so if there was a good one that I missed, let me know. All right, Jethica. Jethica. Is that how a person with like a stuttering problem or like a speech impediment would say Jessica? Jethica? Jethica. There's no character in this movie named Jethica. There's a character named Jessica, but not Jethica. And this isn't even a horror movie. I watched this movie. It's on Tubi. It's free. It's like 70 minutes. Beginning credits, end credits, including. It's like barely a feature-length film. It's very short, and not a lot happens in it. In fact, that's like the biggest criticism I would have for it is that it's too damn short. There's like they don't flesh it out. I watched this movie because it made someone else's list. I read a list of best horror movies because I wanted to watch as many good ones as I could. This one popped up. I saw that it was free, so I was like, fuck it, why not? So Jethica. While hiding out in New Mexico after a freak accident, Elena runs into Jessica, an old friend from high school, when Jessica's stalker suddenly shows up at their door. They must seek help from beyond the grave to get rid of him for good. So this is more of just a comedy. It's a dark comedy. Can you ghost a ghost is the tagline. And it's a 3-person movie, really. You got these 2 girls in a trailer in the open like desert. Look at the poster. That's where it's set for the whole movie. So that's the kind of environment that's the aesthetic of the film. Just desert the whole film. So it's not visually interesting. And yeah, it's a slow burn indie supernatural ghost movie that's only 70 minutes long, but most of that runtime is padded with repeating, lingering B-roll shots. Just shots of nothing, and they just kind of linger on it for a few seconds. Like, we need to stretch this movie out. And it's like that movie The Prey from 1983, that slasher movie that's very short, but they have like 20 minutes of like nature shots. That's what this kind of reminded me of. And it's Kevin just ranting. Like, this guy, I bet there was no script. They're just like, all right, you're pissed off, you're a ghost, rant. And then he just kept talking and talking and talking, basically repeating the same things again and again. And there was a lot of that. So it was just clearly like they were padding the runtime, or they thought that was funny, so they just kept it going. And it was not funny. It was just a lot of repetitious dialogue that just got on my nerves. The premise is sort of interesting at first, but then it just kind of goes nowhere. They resolve the problem with a conversation. That's how they defeat the ghost. Just talk to it, damn it. It would have been funny if there was a montage of multiple failed attempts at killing Kevin with the other ghosts. Because they like hire one ghost to kill, because only a ghost can kill another ghost, according to this movie. That's like the rules. They set up rules in this movie, and that's one of them. And I thought it would have been funny if they just kept trying that. And there was like a whole montage of like them digging up people, resurrecting their ghosts to attack this annoying ghost, Kevin. And then they would all just keep failing, and every ghost would die. But they did that just once and moved on. Like, all right, I guess that didn't work. Let's think of something else. Like, no, just keep trying. Just resurrect somebody who would be better at taking down Kevin. The score was like a techno, like heartbeat, very techno, and repetitive dialogue got on my nerves. The movie is set in New Mexico during the winter in a tiny, isolated trailer. I question why Jessica never changed her number or blocked Kevin after receiving so many video messages. Like, seriously, lady, change your number. Not much happens. The characters that are alive are boring. The fact that the ghost can't touch the living immediately eliminates the threat. So there's no like threat in the movie. There's no suspense. Like, it's not trying to be scary. It's just it's a dark comedy that doesn't make me laugh at all. The characters are never in any danger. So yeah, it's not a horror movie really. Kevin bled out unrealistically fast from his gut stab. That's like the one horror movie moment where they have that flashback where we see how she killed him. and he just gets stabbed in the stomach and drops dead instantly. And this needed more of a story, some twists and turns, and fully fleshed out characters who aren't so one note. Starts with Elena having sex in a car, and then she tells this random guy with no name the story, which we see unfold from there. So this is like a flashback movie, a whole story being told. Um, and yeah, just not a big fan of this one. Kind of interesting at first, but just needed more. There's no meat to this bone, so to speak. No, it's just you can just ghost this movie. Don't watch it. Till Death. All right, so this is from the producer. It says from the creator of Final Destination. This is just from the producer. Like one of the producers of this movie was the guy who wrote Final Destination. So let's use that to market the film. And like this is nothing. This is nothing like Final Destination. I don't know what. This is a bad movie. This is a drawn out movie. And again, this is not even really a horror movie. It's an action movie. It's an action comedy, drama, and it's so drawn out. There's corny dialogue. It's about a bride who, ditches her groom on their wedding night. She gets cold feet. She runs back to her house, and they find out but she thinks they don't know where she lives or where this hideout is, but they do. They go right there that night, and all the groomsmen attack her. And the best man keeps like trying to like jump into his best man speech when he's attacking her. It's really stupid. It's like Ready or Not mixed with like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because you quickly realize that these people that were getting married, are assassins. And yeah, it's got a lot of flashbacks. It's got Jason Patrick from the Lost Boys. So many scenes that could have been trimmed down. Lots of lingering shots, padded, gets very redundant, fails miserably at being funny. You got the little guy from the recent Rob Zombie movies, and I think that's him, in Phantasm 5. It's got a big soundtrack, lots of songs in this, lots of old school songs, a lot of like jukebox songs from like the 50s and stuff. And nothing original or exciting here. Like the fight sequences, the choreography is fine, but the fights were so quick, they didn't last long. They weren't really exciting. When you watch John Wick movies and then you watch this movie, it's hard to like appreciate fights in this movie. Jason Patrick, I thought everything with him was the best part. Like his performance, he gave the best performance in this. He was like the only like seasoned professional that I saw in this that I recognized. I didn't really recognize anyone else. There's that one guy from Violent Night in this movie. He's the best man who keeps giving his best man speech. Why is it that the groom sends all of his groomsmen to keep the bride at the cabin instead of just going there himself if he knew where she was? Why wouldn't he go there himself to talk to her? And he sends them there to keep her there, but she's already staying there voluntarily. Like she was going to stay there anyway. So like why do they need to even approach the cabin and try to like capture her and tie her down? Like she's not going anywhere. So they could have just watched the cabin from a distance. And like why even go into the fucking place in the first? It made no sense. Everything just felt so forced. And like if they were just supposed to make sure she was there, yeah, I already said that. The dialogue is mostly terrible. It tried to be like a Tarantino movie at times. It felt like I was trying to be Tarantino. Especially like the Jason Patrick scenes. Like he has like this USS Indianapolis moment, um, from Jaws. The best man was annoying. Kept dancing all the time. Like, yeah, that was his character's gimmick. He just kept dancing all the time. Like he did not take the situation seriously at all. Um, and the one good kill with the chainsaw, that you see on the poster, the chainsaw, like that's the one good kill, is the chainsaw kill. Everything else forgettable. The bride and groom, they just talk and dance at the very end. Like you think you're about to get this big like fight between the bride and groom, and it's just them talking to each other while dancing for like 10 minutes straight, and then they fight for about 20 seconds and it's over. She stays in her wedding dress the entire movie, which I thought was just dumb on her part. Like why would you put yourself at a disadvantage like that? Like that can't be comfortable fighting in. Like why wouldn't you take that off? Like after you fought the first guy and you realize that they were all there, wouldn't you like rip the dress like Samara Weaving did and Ready or Not, to make it more comfortable to move in. Like, she never does anything. She just leaves the dress on the entire time, never gets changed. She's at her fucking house. Her clothes are right there. She could easily change, but she doesn't. And so, yeah, just that's all I gotta say about this movie. Yeah. Number 5, last movie, Suitable Flesh by Joe Lynch. Now, this is a good movie that we're talking about. Finally, all these movies I was not so positive about. Here's a movie I can be positive about. I really like this one, Suitable Flesh, and it doesn't surprise me because Joe Lynch directed it, and I like him as a filmmaker. He did Wrong Turn 2, and he's the guy from the Holliston TV series. Recommend that if you're a horror fan. Check that out. And so, an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. I believe it's the same writer who wrote the screenplay for this. He wrote the Reanimator films, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Very much kind of like Freaky Friday in a way. It's a lot of like, mind swapping, entering different people's bodies. Jason Goes to Hell, something like that, I guess. Something along those lines. Has incredible dual role performances. It stars Barbara Crampton, which is perfect casting, being that she was in a couple of classic H.P. Lovecraft movies like Reanimator and From Beyond, and so yeah, and her character in this kind of reminds me of her character in From Beyond, and she kind of has like similar like glasses on. She never gets in that sexy outfit in this like she did in that movie. But Lynch throws in a couple of nods to like Reanimator. Like you got, the token black security guard outside the morgue, just the lazy guy reading like pornos. Very much the same character from Reanimator. And the name of the hospital, I believe, is the same, like Miskatonic. And Lynch has a cameo in this. He's been having cameos in his movies as of late. Mayhem with Samara Weaving. Great movie. And so the history of this body hopping entity is never really fully explored. The rules of how it works is a little unclear to me. By the end, I was kind of confused, like how this thing worked, or like how they say like it can only hop in and out of one body like 3 times or something before it's permanent, but then it just hops into other bodies. So is it just one body you can hop in 3 times and then you can't like hop out and back in again for that body? Like, how does it work exactly? I was a little confused on the rules here, but not a major complaint or anything. I'm sure it'll make more sense on rewatch. A lot of dizzying camera work, but on purpose. It's supposed to be like disorienting at times. There's a lot of sex in this movie, a lot of sex scenes, and between 2 people with a huge age gap. You got that kid from The Babysitter in this, and he's much older now in this, but still, like him having sex with what's her face. I forget her name, but there's probably like a 20-30 year age gap between them at least. So it's just a little awkward. I think he's playing a high school kid. So he's like 17 and he's having sex with like this 40 something or 50 something year old lady. I was like, ew, this is weird. Some of the framing I thought was odd, which I don't know. I don't usually complain about framing, but there's certain shots in this movie where I was like, why is it framed like this? But I don't know. I'm not a filmmaker. Maybe it was intentional, but I was just like, I don't agree with this framing. But whatever. That's nitpicky shit. But it has some humor. Not a whole lot of humor in this for a Joe Lynch movie. I was kind of expecting this to be more funny, but there is definitely some humor. Don't get me wrong, but I was just expecting there to be a lot more. So yeah, I would say this is more horror. It's more horror than comedy. That's what I would say. But I think it's still listed as a horror comedy, and I really enjoyed it. Just the performances, the writing, the pacing, the cast. I love seeing Barbara Crampton in this, and it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's a blast. It's coming to Shudder here recently. Should be dropping on Shudder sometime in January of 2024. So check this out, definitely. Suitable Flesh, one of the better movies of 2023, and the best movie of this episode that I'm talking about, without a doubt. So that's the end of my reviews. Now, let's end this video with a horror anthology quiz. 20 questions. Let's get into it. So, question 1. Cat's Eye features 3 stories written by which famous horror writer? And a lot of these questions I've already answered in my talking, earlier in my discussions of anthologies. So if you were paying attention, you'll know the answers. What is the segment in Twilight Zone, the movie, called in which John Lithgow's character believes there is a man on the wing of the airplane? Question 3. To date, how many Creepshow movies have been released? Question 4. Which British film production company was behind a string of anthology horror movies, including Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror? Question 5. Which two influential horror movie directors were behind the camera for the anthology movie Body Bags? Question 6. Name one of the 60 Seconds to Die short films directed by Killian H. Gore. It's a shameless plug because he's the one who wrote these questions. And so, question 7. Which anthology horror film features stories about a haunted mirror, a bus crash premonition, and a ventriloquist dummy? I'll give you a clue. This is a very old one. Very old. Black and white. Question 8 is, what is the name of the pumpkin-like burlap sack-wearing trick-or-treater featured in Trick or Treat? Question 9. Which Star Trek performer appears in the anthology horror film A Christmas Horror Story? Question 10. Two Evil Eyes contains two horror films, one directed by Wes Craven and the other by George Romero. True or false? Again, if you were paying attention earlier, I said who directed this. Is it true or false? Number 11. Which anthology horror movie features the following cast members? Deborah Harry, Christian Slater, Steve Buscemi, and Julianne Moore. Man, again, I really revealed a lot of this stuff earlier. My bad. Go back and listen. Pay attention. I was giving you the answers all along. Question 12. Which series of horror anthology films had a part 3 that is subtitled Viral? Question 13. In which horror anthology movie does Karen Black play a different character in each segment? Question 14. Who plays the title character in the Creepshow segment The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill? Question 15. Steven Spielberg, Joe Dante, John Landis, and George Miller all directed segments in which anthology? Question 16. Which horror anthology am I describing? There's a cake, a meteorite, a beach, a crate, and lots of cockroaches. Question 17. Though not anthology movies themselves, what are the names of the first two motion picture spin-offs of the Tales from the Crypt television series? Question 18. Which famous horror writer are the horror films and Two Evil Eyes based on stories by? Question 19. The short films The Night Billy Raised Hell, Bad Seed, Friday the 31st, and Sweet Tooth all feature in which anthology horror film? And last but not least, question 20. What are the names of the anthology horror movies that use the alphabet for a series of short films? That's a no-brainer. Come on. All right, so there you go. That is the end of this episode. Let me know how you did in the comments below, what you thought about the movies I discussed, your top 10 favorite horror anthologies. Let me know in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video, whenever that will be. Adios.